Hello, everybody. Welcome back to A Goat and a Fox Talk About Movies. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Reynard.
And it is that time of year again, the most magical time of the year, where we get to talk about all the movies that came out the last year. And we're going to do our highlights this year. We're going to do some top 10 highlights.
Yep.
To give a little bit of context here, so these aren't going to be our top 10 movies of the year. What this is that we're going to try to go through and throw a highlight on some movies that we feel like could use a little bit more attention, things that stood out to us that didn't have as much success as maybe like we thought they should have, or just things that we want people to take a look at that might be a little more out of the way.
Yeah.
So like, for example, like Nosferatu and Furiosa, I really enjoyed those, but those were also pretty popular, so we're not gonna elaborate those too much. Or like Dee Dee and Hundreds of Fevers, but specifically Dee Dee especially, that's one that was one of my favorites of the year, but we did a podcast episode on it, so it's like we'll give something else a spotlight. Although I'm gonna open up my list with one very prominent exception. Challengers.
Surely it should have so many Oscar nominations, right?
How the hell did this get nothing? No nominations at all.
It's completely bonkers. Like, I can think of top of my head, like, screenplay, score, editing, cinematography. You could even throw it in for, direction, picture, whatever. But I guess we just have to talk about Emilia Perez instead next time.
See, my conspiracy theory is that everybody just meant to vote for challengers, but all of their handwriting was very terrible in the exact same way, and so it was misread as Emilia Perez.
That makes sense.
That's what happened. We already talked about this a lot before. Yeah, so you can go watch our episode if you want to hear our extended thoughts on that. It was one of the best of the year. I'd say at least like top 3 for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just had to throw it on there. I swear to God.
No, I feel like I'm a crazy person for having that be so ignored.
But hey, we'll jump over to your list now. What is your number 10?
Yeah, I will say one final end cap on Challengers is if you like the score, they released around the time of the film's debut. Boys Noise is like a German music producer, and he made like a 30-minute long kind of supercut of it that's even crazier than what Reznor and Ross gave us, so a little fun bit there. But anyway, my 10th film that I picked, it's a documentary called Grand Theft Hamlet, directed by Sam Crane and Penny Grills. It's basically...
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah. It's basically about these two actors. It was filmed in 2021 during the last COVID lockdown in the UK. These two performers are out of work due to the lockdown and whatnot, and they find themselves playing a lot of Grand Theft Auto online. And they come up with this crazy idea that they want to try and mount a production of Hamlet inside the environment of GTA Online. So it kind of follows the entire process from the inception of the idea to casting and rehearsal to the final performance. And it kind of is equally sort of like can we pull this off? Like, is GTA just somewhere people want to kill each other? Or can we have this other creative expression? And it just becomes the weirdest community theater production ever.
I really need to see that, because that's the kind of thing that I'm really interested in, is just kind of seeing how do people express themselves in these strange places that you would have never thought would be possible.
Yeah, it's really fun to see how they manage to, because of the lockdown, they do end up getting a pretty solid crew of folks to play the various parts, and it's interesting to see the actors kind of trying to figure out, okay, I have these emotes that I have, can I use those in my performance, and how can I take what's essentially just like a voice acting role and kind of like bring something new to it. It looks at kind of, is this, what's like legitimate art? Is it, if it's in a video game, is it inherently like lower class than if I'm going to go to like the theater and see it? And also just the kind of frustrations of the medium itself as well, just like having to wrangle people and finding someone, but then they have to drop out, and just kind of this community theater aspect to it. That's, it's also just really funny to see.
I can just imagine one of the challenges being that I don't think that the studio ever intended for people to put on a theatrical performance in Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, and I don't think most like rehearsals of Hamlet require air supports from like helicopters shooting down police anytime other players show up, and anytime violence in the play triggers the police AI response.
Yeah, I absolutely need to see that one. I need to get that on my radar.
It's kind of an ode to the fun weirdos you run into online and making something new of it.
The metaverse could never. The metaverse could never.
All 7 people.
Let's see. On my end, the next one up I want to talk about is Quiet Place Day 1. And I put this one a little bit lower just because it's part of a franchise, so it's like, obviously it's going to get a bit more publicity. I still feel like it's not like one of the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, the Quiet Place franchise, I think, is legitimately one of the more solid ones coming out of Hollywood right now.
It's really made a kind of a life for itself there.
Yeah, and the concept for this one is very interesting. So it takes place at the beginning of, at the beginning of the invasion with the aliens come down and everything. Mm-hmm. And it follows this terminally ill woman who, she comes into the city along with everybody else in hospice care, and they get stuck there. And she realizes, you know what? I'm going to die anyways. I'm going to go get pizza no matter what. And so the movie becomes kind of like this journey of her like trying to reach this place that meant a lot to her so that she can have like this final happy moment before she dies.
Mm-hmm.
The main change being that she thought she was going to die to this illness. Now she's like, well, the aliens will get it done quicker, I guess. But it was fascinating because it's made by the same guy who did Pig a couple years ago.
Oh, okay. Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. Not Nicolas Cage,
I know,
the director.
Thinking about the actor in the film.
But yeah, so that Nicolas Cage movie, and he brings all this same style here, and it still kind of does the same thing where, you have to have some parts of the movie where like a little bit more action-y because it's a scary movie. But then I'd say like at least like 60% of the movie is just these like very quiet contemplative moments that were really good, actually. Like it was very solid. I quite enjoyed it. And even when you can kind of see the seams where, again, the different parts come together, those parts are still all pretty good.
Yeah, I'm going to have to, like, give that a look. I think it's also interesting. I feel like a lot of kind of post-apocalyptic, let's just call it, movies or TV shows, think like The Walking Dead, or they always, like, jump to, like, it's already happened and it's just kind of an established thing. So it's interesting to see kind of, like, a kickoff, I guess, if you will. Yeah,
it's a little bit different from what we usually see in the genre, and yeah, like I just think that deserves a bit more love. Quiet Place movies are real good, actually.
Excellent. My next film is something that I saw at SIFF Festival, but it's on HBO Max now. It's Jane Schoenbrun's sophomore feature, I Saw the TV Glow. It's kind of a...
yes.
It's a horror coming of age-ish movie. It's about a high schooler who gets introduced to this television show called The Pink Opaque by a girl at his school who's kind of a bit of a nonconformist or a loner or whatnot, and he becomes obsessed with the show. It kind of creates this space for him to explore his identity, and kind of the film looks at this TV show and this relationship and kind of how the relationship between the show and reality starts to kind of become blurry, especially for the girl that he's with. It's a very visually arresting movie.
I actually have gotten, I recently put in an order for the DVD for that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be getting it in the mail pretty soon here. I'm really excited for that because I've wanted to see that one. Because I have some other friends who have also seen it and they really liked it. So I want to see it and be part of the TV Glow army.
Yeah, the screening I was really fun. It was packed and super buzzy, and it's kind of, I think, definitely something that a lot of people can kind of see something of themselves in the film. There's obviously kind of like, there's like a trans allegory element to it, sort of, you know, experiencing dysphoria and trying to find something that you see yourself in. But I think it could be generalized to just kind of like that sensation of, you know, there's this thing that, okay, that's me. Like, I am seeing myself in it, and then kind of transitioning to something a bit more painful and melancholy. I think it's really kind of got the sensation of nostalgia in the truest sense. It's not the like, oh, I see that Star Wars, you know, beep boop blurp plops and I recognize it. It's more the sense of something you yearn for but you can't go back to. The back half of the film becomes this sort of existential nightmare. The idea that, like, what if that TV show I really liked actually sucks?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, God, and kind of, I've been attempting to rewatch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which this is definitely kind of one of the touchstones for Sean Brun here, and it's like, oh boy, Xander's so much of a weird, creepy incel than I recall it being, and all that kind of stuff.
It's also Joss Whedon's self-professed self-insert.
Yep. Wonderful. You know, we should have seen it coming all along. I also, like, the first half of the film, I was reading this, like, little capsule review of the Argentine film Cienega recently, and the author ended it with something to the effect of, like, every film about summer is actually about last summer, and I think that's really applicable. The first half of I Saw the TV Glow is a really powerful evocation of that last, I don't know, couple of weeks before you have to go back to school. Just this sort of like hazy quality to the air, and there's this kind of melancholy, a sense of impermanence. I remember when I was in high school, I'd go on these like long walks just through the neighborhood, and just the streets feel different at that time. And I think the way that the film is shot, and these kind of just these wandering tracking shots over streets, and there's these like beautiful chalk drawings and stuff, it just captures that feeling so well. And I think even just kind of something you can kind of soak in, it's a really enjoyable experience.
Yeah, that sounds so lovely. It's like, that's something that I'm really looking forward to seeing when I get it.
Yes. Sean Brun's debut feature is also really good. It's like We're All Going to the World's Fair, something to that effect. That's also highly recommended.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Let's see. My next one is Between the Temples, which was an interesting movie. So it follows this man who he's a cantor at a Jewish synagogue, and he runs into his old school teacher. Mm-hmm. And she ends up coming to him and saying, listen, I never formally completed my initiation. It's is it bar or bat mitzvah? And it's
bat
mitzvah. And even though I'm I'm old and I'm older than you. I want to complete that before I die.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it was a movie that dealt with a lot of very interesting themes and everything. I thought it was quite humorous. The editing on it could be a little
yeah,
curious sometimes.
I was gonna say the editing is kind of driving me up a wall. Let's make every choice.
I remember there was one part, and because you had seen this as well,
mm-hmm.
and I was like, did they just freeze frame the end of one shot there? And you confirmed for me that was normal. I was like, okay, that wasn't a malfunction.
No, the humor it's that kind of very like misanthropic sort of. You get the sense that there was probably a lot of like improvisation going on, and they were just sort of slapping it all together at the end. It's very like, for me, distracting.
Yeah, it's like like I said, the editing can be a little out there, but I'm always partial to movies of people being in a dialogue with their faith, regardless of what that faith is. It's just like I feel like there's. It's a sense of trying to, like, how do you identify yourself? How do you see your place in the world? And this movie did that in a way that was both humorous and thought-provoking.
Yeah. Jason Schwartzman's having a hell of a year.
I know. Although I can only ever hear him as a character in Fantastic Mr. Fox.
I will say that film also has some of the most stressful dinner scenes I've ever had. Like, watched.
Oh my god! Yes. like that climactic moment there, and you're just like, oh shit!
I just wanted to let the earth swallow me up.
This good movie, very good movie. Want to highlight it.
Excellent. My next picture is a little bit of a left fielder, I suppose. It's a movie, All Shall Be Well, directed by Ray Young. It's a film out of Hong Kong that I saw at SIFFest, but it's on Criterion Channel currently, so it's available for streaming, I presume rental as well. It's a romantic drama that follows the changing relationship between an older woman named Angie and her, I guess we could just call them in-laws, when her life partner Pat suddenly and unexpectedly dies. Same-sex marriage isn't legal in Hong Kong. They would have to like travel abroad to, get married, which they hadn't done. And both of these women were financially stable, but because of that lack of a marriage, the home they live in has the deceased partner Pat's name on the deed, so it defaults to her family. And it kind of starts to expose the superficiality of the relationship there. There's kind of two aspects to it, I think. Like, it really highlights the importance of the right for people to get married if they want to do so. There's obviously, it's an expression of love first and foremost, but there's also legal aspects to it that are really important and impactful on our lives, right? And so you have this heart-wrenching experience of this woman who, like, even something like a funeral, like, she's kind of sidelined because she's just, like, quote-unquote, like a really good friend instead of a spouse or a partner. So it's, it's not easy, but there's also, I think it's important, like, there's this through line of kind of enduring love, and there's still a real expression of, like, the kind of way that these two women care for one another, just kind of down to like small little naturalistic gestures and whatnot. So I think it does highlight the how that kind of relationship you can't take away as well. So I think it's really, really beautifully done and effective.
And don't spoil it for me, but watch this movie and we're gonna cry a little, a lot, or a lot.
I would say it's not like you're gonna cry a middle amount. It's not like super, maudlin or anything, but it's hard at points.
Okay, it's like because you're just gonna be like, oh, this is I can already feel my heart wrenching a little bit just hearing you describe what's going on and everything. I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I think it feels more affirming than negative, if that helps.
Okay. Kind of in that same vein, next movie I have is one called Queer, which is also done by Luca Guadagnino. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yep.
Which stars Daniel Craig, who is a gay man. He's an American expatriate living in various places in Latin America over the course of the movie. And his relationship, another man he finds, and the kind of relationship they have, which it's hard to describe very succinctly.
Yeah.
This is a movie that did leave me quite sad in the theater. But and I will say as well, it's like, because even though I have this kind of like higher on my highlight list, I would still say Challengers was a stronger film overall, but I want to give Queer a little bit more of a spotlight, because again, Ugo Guadagnino gave us 2 movies that were at least great the same year. This man gets nothing from the Academy.
It's crazy. Like, I really like this film. I know that, like, I think when people look at both Challengers and Queer, like, Queer is kind of slated a little bit, and I do think that at points it's a little bit loose, but I've always been in favor of, I think Guadagnino has a definite kind of weird surrealist vein to him, and this is certainly in that. It really captures the spirit of the Burroughs novel that it's based on, and it just looks so gorgeous. Like, Sayabu Mukdeepram should be twice nominated, and yet here we are, because, like, it looks, I don't know, whenever they're outside in Mexico City or wherever else they go, it looks like a vintage postcard or something. The way the light is very pastel, and yeah, it's lovely.
And it's just, I don't know how to. The way this movie made me feel was very haunting. Because again, like, you have, Daniel Craig's character. He's like, you can tell like he's very much struggling with his, this image of himself. This like kind of like destructive spiral they can't seem to break out of. And at the end of this movie, it's just like, oh my god. Am I going to die alone? That's what I got away from it. I was like, oh Jesus. But it's a very, very evocative movie, and I quite enjoyed it. That's the other banger movie that Luca did this year.
Yep. 2 for 1, or 0 for 2.
Yeah. And let's see, the next one on your list was
Yes, so next I have The Missile, directed by Mia Tervo. It's a Finnish-Estonian co-production. It's a dramedy, I guess, period film that's based on an actual incident. It kind of centers on this woman, Nina, who's living in a tiny little town in northern Finland. She started to work at the local newspaper in order to pay off the damages that she did to their office window when her like trailer accidentally crashes into it. And it's this like tiny little town where the biggest news story of the year before is that a sock fell through a hole in the ice during a fishing contest. So like nothing happens. Yeah, it's just, I don't even know how they have a newspaper. But towards the beginning of the film, a Soviet missile crash lands nearby after having allegedly gone astray, and this obviously throws everything into a flux. Suddenly, people are showing up to investigate and whatnot. Was it an accident, or was it actually a provocation? Is it equipped with a nuclear warhead? So Nina decides to kind of try and start investigating it.
okay.
I will say, I couldn't find it streaming anywhere just yet, but hopefully it'll get distribution at some point. It kind of fizzles out a little bit towards the end. It starts out very much as this sort of like, I don't know, Armando Iannucci-esque political satire. It's very kind of absurdist. Have you seen like The Death of Stalin?
Yes, I love that one, actually.
Yeah, that one's a lot of fun. It's not as bonkers as that, but it's kind of like leaning into the absurdity of it all. Like the locals are trying to kind of capitalize on this. Like the restaurant starts selling rocket trout, which is just they take fillets and stick a sparkler in it and trying to make a buck off that. And this kind of, you know, I don't know, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die sort of energy to it. But it also has this vein of kind of exploring like border violations, and is like, you know, you have this geopolitical aspect to it where Finland is essentially being bullied by the USSR and kind of ignored by NATO. So on the larger scale, you have that sort of implication, and on the smaller scale, Nina had recently left her abusive husband, and he's still kind of, you know, lingering. So you kind of have this interplay of those ideas that's interesting. It does get a little dicey in its handling of that, but I think it's still engaging. Not least of which because it's one of those movies that just has a lot of fun background characters. Like at this hotel where that kind of becomes like the base of operations. You have the like super bitchy manager, and then you have the kind of weird, you know, doom prophet who just is always at the bar. You have like the British journalist who is completely befuddled by Finnish custom, but does have like kind of outside information he's getting from foreign press. So all these like little kind of characters sort of just make this interesting tapestry that kind of is in the background of this larger structure.
That's so fascinating. It's like, because I can see the parallels are between like the personal and the broader like political kind of, you know, geopolitical plot that's going on there. And kind of like, you know, how do we, you know, in a world where it seems like, you know, especially at that time where, you know, because Finland wasn't in NATO, right? That was, so it's kind of like, where do we go? What do we do? What, you know, what can we do? And just kind of like, you just have to, like you said, live life, because you could die tomorrow. Yeah, I'm gonna add that onto my watch list as well. Actually, I'm gonna do that right now. You can hear my typing here. This is live, captured live. There we go. All right. Next one on my list is a little bit more of like a chill movie. Thelma.
Oh yeah.
Which was a very fun movie that I saw earlier this year. So follows this elderly woman, Thelma, who gets scammed out of her money, and her family's like, oh, you know, how could you fall for that scam? And she's kind of tired of people thinking that she's just, you know, helpless old woman, and so she breaks out and goes on a John Wick style journey to get her money back, to prove that she can still do things. And I don't know, like there's nothing in this movie, there's not like, you know, there's kind of like an underlying theme, like, oh, you know, how we treat the elderly, but also realizing that there is a point in your life where you need, you know, you will need help from others, and that can be kind of a hard thing to accept. But it's not like, you know, big like social commentary themes or anything like that, but it was just a really fun time, good characters.
It has the greatest how to close a internet pop-up window action scene in film history.
Yeah, it's just like there's so much stuff here that's like, if you're somebody who thinks like, oh, comedies are all terrible nowadays, look at this one. Look at this one, and there's a good chance that you'll find it charming.
Yeah, it's really cute. Got a great, June Squibb is excellent in the lead role. Richard Roundtree, I think it's his last role. Like, but yeah, but he's super fun, and then Malcolm McDowell shows up.
It's just a great time, and this is one that I think that you can. I think it's one that'll be a crowd pleaser. I think it's one that anybody can enjoy. So yeah, give it a shot. Yeah. It's on Hulu right now, anyways. So.
I have something a little tonally different next.
Oh no.
It's been a pretty good year for horror overall, I would say. You mentioned Nosferatu. I think a lot of people are enjoying Heretic and there's other stuff out there, but I wanted to call out the film Oddity, directed by Damien McCarthy.
Okay.
It's this sort of this supernatural horror film that kind of feels like a throwback to sort of older, kind of like 70s horror. It's about this woman who's a blind clairvoyant working at an oddities shop, and she's investigating her sister's murder. There's also a really creepy mannequin that just... you don't need to sleep after this, it's fine.
I love mannequin.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, you have a supernatural horror, like this mannequin kind of becomes almost like a golem or something. So you have this kind of strange element there. It's also kind of like almost like a giallo film. It's a mystery aspect to who killed the sister. Kind of there's this estate that's, who wants ownership of it that's in question. So it's kind of fun in that regard. It's very atmospheric, but it's also got maybe the best jump scare in quite some time. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like with spiders, how they're like knowing that there had been something that was right there but isn't any longer is almost worse than just knowing it's there. So get some fun jumps and stuff.
Ooh, that sounds good. I love movies that can make like a good jump scare, because that can be, it's a thing that's easy to do, but it's hard to do well.
Right. So yeah, I don't have that much to say about this. It's a good time. It's streaming on Shudder, and if you have Hoopla through your public library, it's available there as well. Yeah, it's a nice little spook fest.
Awesome. Let's see, my next one up. And this is one that's been going around a lot. So it's a little bit lower on the list, but Sing Sing.
Mm-hmm.
Which was a very, very lovely movie. It's let me go here. Actually, give me a second. I want to make sure I get the names right. Yeah, so Sing Sing. It's a movie that features Coleman Domingo, but it also features a lot of people who were real life convicts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a movie about a theater program in a prison and the transformative effect that it has on the people who are in it. And also showing the inhumanity of, the correctional industry, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy to kind of summarize there, but there's so many moments in this where, again, I'm a sucker for movies that about bringing the humanity out of people who thought that they didn't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's a movie about having compassion and patience for people who say they don't want it, and continuing to have it anyways.
Coleman Domingo is really great in that.
I feel like one thing with the movie that I wish was that does feel a little bit awkward is that because it's in this place where it's like halfway between a narrative feature and halfway a documentary. And like those are two things where it's like trying to strike that balance, I think, is very difficult. And I don't know if this struck it as well as something like, say, like Nomadland, for example, which had a similar thing where it had an actor playing a fictional person, but incorporating real life people who experienced this thing. But again, like saying like, you know, Sing Sing doesn't reach the highs of Nomadland for me is like, because Nomadland's like a absolutely incredible, amazing movie. It's like, so Sing Sing is still very excellent, I think.
Yeah, I in a similar boat. I almost would have preferred just like a straight documentary about it. I think it's a really interesting like story to explore, but I think as we get it, it's engaging.
Yeah, so wanted to just there again. It's one that I know has been getting some good attention, but I also want to just throw a little bit of love that way as well, because it is a great movie.
Mm-hmm. So for me, up next, when I was putting together the list, I was trying to kind of cast a wide net, like as far as like kinds of movies, and then I realized I have two like Cold War era dramatic comedies. It's like, okay, whatever, it's fine. I have The New Year That Never Came. It's a Romanian film directed by Bogdan Mureșanu. I can't find it streaming just yet, but I really do hope that it gets picked up. I think when I saw it at Vancouver Movie, I think their title card was up front, so maybe it'll show up there eventually, maybe. Anyway, it's really structurally interesting. It's basically following, it's set in Bucharest at the very end of the Ceausescu regime, but it kind of follows, I think there's 5 or 6 storylines, so it's kind of about the intertwining lives of these different people living in different facets of society, with the central idea being there's a New Year's variety program that's planned for broadcast on TV, except the core of the whole program is supposed to be this like kind of sycophantic show of loyalty to their Uncle Nicu, Ceausescu, except the woman who is kind of featured in that has defected and is now, you know, persona non grata. So the TV crew are given the impossible task from higher up to keep the segment in, but somehow get her entirely out of it. So they're trying to figure out how to make that work in this like completely disastrous production. And then kind of with that going in the core, you have these other things that kind of feed in as we kind of barrel towards this regime coming to a close.
Oh, yeah, that's like, I really love those historical kind of movies where showing these different people in the middle of a very dramatic collapse of tyrannical regime there.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can get it soon here.
Yeah. I think like the way that it kind of does that interweaving is interesting. Like it can be super ephemeral, just like, you know, 2 people that pass in the street, or it can be like at one point there's a family at home in their apartment. They're like, who's that crazy drunk lady screaming a couple ones over? And it turns out it's like the actress who's trying to, you know, figure out how to get out of doing the things she's been cast to do. And it illustrates, you know, the horrors of totalitarianism, but there's also like this aspect of dark humor to it that kind of emphasizes the fundamentally pathetic and unstable nature of authoritarian figures. You know, when you have to be constantly propped up through propaganda, that can only take you so far. You know, you have like one of the threads is this dad who spends the entire movie trying to destroy a mailbox because he realizes his son wrote essentially a letter to Santa. He overheard his dad said he wants Ceausescu dead, and so he's like, okay, Santa, do me a solid here. But he's like, oh God, I can't let, like, you know, I can't be found out like that or whatnot. So it's funny, but, you know, in a very sort of bitter way. It's just, I don't know, an interesting little portrait.
You laugh through the horrors.
Exactly.
Next movie I'd like to highlight is one called The Peasants, which was an animated film, actually. And the way that it was really interesting. So it's done with like watercolors, like it's a painted movie. And basically it's just a story about peasants in Central Europe. And I don't know, it's like there's different plot threads that intersect. Like there's there's I'm sorry, I'm having like a brain fart for a moment. No, you're there. But here we go. A Polish film, that's what it is. Yes. It's kind of like the politics of this setting, this time, where it's like you marry for land, and the peasants' rights come into conflict with the noblemen saying, "Oh, we don't want you going into our forest anymore for game," and the peasants like, "Well, that's where we get our stuff. What are you talking about?" Just like the relationships, the politics, all that kind of stuff that goes on. And it's a very visually stunning movie, and it's something I would say it's like if you like animation but you want something that's more for definitely geared towards adults rather than family friendly stuff, give this a shot. I think like the one thing I was worried about going in is did they just paint over a live action movie and not take advantage of the medium? But there are many points where the transitions of it really, you can tell that they took advantage of more abstract things that animation can do, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, the trailers for that looked really interesting.
Yeah, check it out.
I'll throw that on the list. I next have we have a film by Aaron Schimberg called A Different Man. It's currently streaming on HBO Max, so it is available. This is, of the two performances Sebastian Stan put out this year, this is my preferred one. And it's an interesting kind of almost meta story about a guy who has extensive facial tumors. He works as an actor, but he feels that his opportunities are limited due to his appearance. He is essentially stuck working maybe the most crazy workplace training video of all time. This is essentially like something to the effect of like, your ugly coworkers are people too, essentially, is kind of the the message. Great, this is wonderful. So anyway, he undergoes this procedure that completely remakes him as a new guy that kind of just looks like more conventional, shall we say. He's kind of experiencing this identity crisis at the same time that the sort of manic pixie dream girl type woman who moved in near him has decided to start writing a play about his former self.
Oh, okay. And so it's... And then, like, both of them, what happens there when, he's gone through the surgery. It's like, oh my gosh, this is... I saw the trailer for this. I wanted to see it. Mm-hmm. It was like... There was so much stuff that was going on when this came out. Because this was September, right?
Yeah, something like that. Late summer, early fall.
Yeah, because like a full disclosure, I went through 2 job changes this year. For everybody listening, had 2 job changes this year. I didn't get to see as many movies as I would have wanted. Mm-hmm. I barely reached 100 this year. Oh my goodness!
Oh my goodness! You gotta pump up those numbers.
But this was one that was definitely on my list.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, Sebastian Stan's great in it. Renate Reinsve, he might remember from The Worst Person in the World, is great as this sort of playwright, because basically he decides to try and audition to play himself, and the course of the film is about him kind of slowly being pushed out of his own life or sense of self. The movie kind of feels like an anxiety attack. Like there's this very like flighty camera language to it that I enjoy. So it's very immersive and crazy.
Sounds like just my kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm looking at it here, starring Michael Shannon as himself.
Yeah, Michael Shannon pops up. Adam Pearson, who is kind of the self, has an interesting dual role that's really funny.
So that is Different Man. Not to be confused with Better Man.
Not Better Man. There was no aping around in this one.
Let's see. My next one is one called Love Lies Bleeding.
Hmm.
And this was really something.
This is Zack Snyder's favorite movie of the year, apparently.
Okay, maybe the man has some taste. But this is the kind of movie that's like, if you like movies about really fucked up people trying to deal with each other, gotta check this out. Check this out. It's basically this woman who gets into a sapphic relationship with somebody who rolls through town. She wants to become a female bodybuilder. Her dad is a local not crime lord, maybe drug lord. It's kind of falls in the same thing, right? I don't know. He kills people. Now, I didn't see Rose Glass's first movie, Saint Maud, because that kind of got lost in the shuffle of the 2020 reschedulings for me, unfortunately. But I was really happy to see this, and now I do have to go back and watch Saint Maud because she has a real sharp eye here. She can make something real good.
Yeah, Saint Maud is excellent, and between these two, Rose Glass has an interesting way of depicting the world through the distorted perspective of someone who has like a very specific kind of break from reality. You know, here you have roid rage, and there you have this kind of religious mania, and how that like informs even the way that the film is shot, not just the acting or the script, but just the entirety of that universe. And I was rewatching it last night, and I could definitely see why this would be like a Snyder thing, just because it does indulge in these it pushes things a little bit too far at points, but it makes sense for the world, and it's just kind of strange to see.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Mm-hmm. I won't spoil how it goes, but ending gets a little crazy. Fucking
weird.
Like,
why not?
Yeah. Anyways, your next one on the list.
Yeah, my next one is also kind of a formally ambitious, less crazy but interesting. And also, I will say I'm kind of slightly cheating on a couple of these because, to be pedantic, some of these technically did get like a 2023 like festival release at like Venice or something, but didn't go wide in the US till like later, so whatever. Doesn't count.
Oh, it's fine.
Checkmate.
It's fine.
Yeah, who cares? This is all fake. This movie is directed by Bertrand Bonello. It's a French film called The Beast. It is a very loose adaptation of the Henry James novella, The Beast in the Jungle. And it follows, if I can just try to summarize, it's about a woman who lives in the near future where AI control everything. and
Oh.
they do not approve of human emotion. They think it makes people weak. And so in order to get a better job, she has to go through these regression sessions where she experiences like past lives of hers in order to cleanse her DNA.
Oh. It's like an Assassin's Creed in here.
Yeah, so it's basically there's like 3 chapters essentially. There's the kind of the 2044 like kind of generic dystopian metropolis. There's 2010s Los Angeles, and there's this sort of like fin de siècle Paris. And it's her, and she always ends up meeting Lea Seydoux plays the lead, and her partner is George Mackey, who plays the guy that her character in each timeline kind of inevitably ends up meeting. So it's kind of about like this sort of inevitability of fraught love, or this relationship that always kind of ends badly, and also kind of humanity's relationship to artifice or to self-image. You have AI in the future. In the Paris section, there's kind of these like like one of them's a doll maker. You have kind of a companion doll in the future that shows up. It's played by Guslagi Mbulanda, she was the defendant in Saint-Omer.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
Yeah, so it's very like, it's a very big movie. It's very ambitious, but I think it's very interesting if you're willing to kind of give it your time and sort of set your expectations at the door and just let it do what it's going to do.
Yeah, because it actually sounds like something, because there's a project I'm working on right now. That I think that could be really inspirational for. I'm gonna save that in a special place, a digital sticky note.
It's streaming on the Criterion channel, and they have a
Ooh.
Blu-ray release of it.
I will find it. All right, yeah, that, because it sounds like something that I don't know. Like I said, I'm gonna check that out. Let's see. My next one is one called Kneecap. And it's about these two guys who, it's based off a true story of them founding like a rap group in Ireland in Gaelic that because so one of them is a teacher, and he's trying to like teach his students Gaelic, but they're not really into it because it's like, well, what's the point? All of the Gaelic lessons, like, the farmer takes the plow to the field, and the kid's like, this is so boring, we don't give a shit. And so they form this group, make this music that gets kids, well, I wouldn't say kids because these songs are about like drugs and fuck the system. Like very much not the kind of thing that's school appropriate, which means the kids love it and it become really popular. And a lot of it's about like holding on to the identity in a system where Britain's like, well, we don't want to, we want to get rid of this because it's annoying to us, it's too provocative. It kind of plays to the tensions that still exist between Ireland and Britain. But I think that what is very interesting about the movie is that the two folks who started this band play themselves in their movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is a really cool kind of like little twist that makes it feel all the more authentic. It was a very I don't know, it made me feel some kind of way. I was just like, yeah, fuck the system. Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
enjoy the very splashy kind of, there's all these graphics that keep showing up on screen, and it feels like a extended music video or something. It's very easy, like kind of easy on the eyes.
Yeah, just the energy of it. It's like it's very,
energetic.
it's kind of like in your face in the best way possible. Very much enjoyed it, and yeah, that's like my second biggest highlight of the year. Pass it back over to you.
All right, my number 2 is a film by one of my favorite directors, Alice Rohrwacher. It's called La Chimera. It's a film out of Italy that is about a British archaeologist. It's played by Josh O'Connor, who you'll remember from Challengers. He had a pretty good run here. Arthur, has just gotten out of prison for grave robbing, but it doesn't take him too long to get right back into it. He kind of gets pulled into this group of Tomboroli, these grave robbers, to steal Etruscan artifacts for sale on the black market. And it kind of becomes this sort of crime caper film in a way.
Okay.
I really like... Rohrwacher has this way of... It's not really like magic realism, which I have a dubious relationship to, but her movies can feel like fables almost. There's this sort of dreamlike quality to things. It feels real, but kind of at a remove from conventional logic. I think her earlier film, Happy as Lotso, also does this really well. He's, in this sort of like, this grave robbing group, but he's also kind of motivated by, there's this woman, Benjamina, that he's in love with, who's this kind of fleeting sort of, I don't know, Eurydice type presence for him, who's like he can never quite get to, and he only ever sees in dreams. And the dreams are initially kind of presented with different framing to the main thrust of the film. However, that kind of framing device starts to go away, so you get a bleeding together of the two elements of the film, reality and dream. And it kind of makes for this really interesting kind of folktale almost.
Yeah, I think I remember I was going to watch this. I started, but then there was... I ended up having to leave, unfortunately, because there's I had some kind of I won't get into details. I had to leave, unfortunately, but I did really enjoy what I was watching at first, and I have to revisit it.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable, and kind of, exploring that relationship and kind of this idea of what do we owe to the dead? And you're desecrating these graves. What, is the ethics of all of that?
And surely it'll be a shoo-in for Best International Film, right? Right?
Isabella Rossellini shows up in it, and she would have better been a supporting nomination for that than for sending copy or papers the movie.
Let's give her the Oscar and we'll pretend it's for this.
It's fine. We love Rossellini.
Yes. Now we are at our top picks. And again, this isn't our topics for the whole year. This is just something that we thought was, deserves a little extra highlight. And I'm gonna pick the new Joker movie.
Oh, Todd Phillips.
What? No, fuck that. I'm talking about The People's Joker by Vera Drew. Yeah, so this movie has a very interesting story behind it. This movie was illegal for a couple years. Basically had to do a guerrilla style circulation around film festivals because Warner Brothers would issue a cease and desist if they found out. So they would screen it without telling anybody and then get out of there before Warner Brothers could catch him.
Very running gun.
But eventually, they did reach some kind of a deal. So it was allowed to be put into theaters legally. And just that alone makes me think like, okay, I have to see what's in this. Mm-hmm. And what it is quite unlike anything else I've seen before in a theater. It is very like and this kind of hits a very certain nostalgic itch for me. Those like early 2010s, late aughts YouTube videos where people didn't come into the platform with like, oh, here's our content plan. Here's like no, it's like you just did random shit.
Mm-hmm.
For the hell of it. And this had that kind of feeling where it's kind of like tongue in cheek, where it's like, yeah, you know that it's not real, but you suspend your disbelief for the sake of what you're seeing.
Yeah, it's like if a punk zine were a movie or something.
Right. And what is so it's. I'm trying to think of like the best way to kind of summarize everything this movie does in a succinct way. It's very difficult because on the one hand, it is a trans storyline. Vera Drew is trans, plays Joker, who is, and so kind of like taking on this Joker persona the same way as her taking on. It almost kind of reminds me of like gay queens and everything like that. So they take on that persona and everything to kind of be more liberating.
Drag queens, yeah, that's
okay. Drag. My brain is.
That's fine.
I was like drag, kind of like that. It's almost like where the Joker becomes like almost like a drag queen kind of persona. Except again, it's. I can't think right now. I'm snowed in. Everything is just. But anyways, so it kind of has that feel to it, and I think that because I like the kind of like Batman and John's kind of like my pop culture kryptonite. Like I'll be interested in anything Batman.
Yeah.
And I think the best compliment I can give this movie is that because there's this take that's been going around for the past decade where it's like, oh, Batman is just a rich guy who beats up mentally ill people. He's a fascist, which is like the stupidest shit ever. It's like this contrarianism for the sake of it. This is the only time where I'd say, okay, you guys actually had a point to it. I'll allow it. Because it is a movie, both in its production and within its text, about the right to express yourself in a way that is not considered acceptable or normal. Being able to, communicate things that are outside of the norm, that aren't corporate approved, not advertiser friendly, that kind of thing. And
right,
I don't know, like it's a very countercultural way to take these very mainstream concepts and again turn them into something countercultural. And I think that was very brilliant, very bold, and I think it deserves a lot of attention for what it's done.
Yeah, I'll take that over one of those weird Winnie the Pooh public domain horror films anytime.
Isn't that cinematic universe on?
Now it's a whole yeah. Oh my god! No, there's like Popeye and
there's
Steamboat Willie.
Evil Peter Pan one. Yes.
Oh my god.
Move over, Avengers. Okay, so what is your top highlight word?
Yeah, I can't believe we're gonna end on this note, but my top pick for interesting films that came out last year or so, is Red Rooms by Pascal Plante. It's a Canadian film out of Quebec, and it is a courtroom drama / psychological thriller film. It's about the trial of a man named Ludovic Chevalier, dubbed the Demon of Rosemont. He's on trial for creating and distributing a series of snuff films. And we're following this story from the perspective of this woman, Kellyanne, who's a groupie of his. He's created these horrible, horrible films, and yet there's this group of women who are kind of obsessed with him. And it's just kind of this journey into the heart of darkness as she kind of goes further and further and further beyond the scope of what would ever be acceptable in society. Because the thing is, he's been caught and arraigned, but there is still one film out there that hasn't been located. It's an interesting movie because I think a concept like that could so easily just kind of tip over into just cheap exploitation, but it really overcomes that. It's very much like a take a shower kind of movie. Afterwards, you're like, okay, I don't need to think about that for a while. But it's the idea of, like, you know, horror is what you don't see and, like, you know, don't show the monster kind of thing, I think can get a little bit cliche. But here it's really used well because they do not ever show the films. You see, I think, like a frame of like the aftermath, and you see like the prosecution tries to like submit an item, an exhibit into like evidence, but that gets stricken because they deem it shocking. But you can hear it, and the use of sound in the film as a whole is really arresting. The opening is just, you're in a courtroom and the prosecuting attorney starts to just kind of lay out their opening statement by just describing in very clinical detail all of the horrible things that are shown in the film. But the entire time you're just kind of in this like very ordinary room. You can hear kind of the HVAC clicking on in the background and just kind of people shuffling around while this horrible thing is being outlined. So it's kind of this jarring like kind of disconnect. And the way the film mixes diegesis and non-diegesis, the idea of what is actually happening in the film versus kind of the more cinematic element to it. The sounds from the film are incorporated and interpolated into the score at points, which is really interesting. So it's not an easy watch, but I think it's one that's very confident as this kind of, it out Fincher's Fincher for me. Okay.
Out Fincher's Fincher. That's a bold claim, but
that's his claim. Yes. Stick to my guns.
Because that all just sounds, just imagining what it'd be like was like as you were just describing it, kind of made me shiver a little bit. It's like, oh Jesus, yeah. I have an overactive imagination sometimes.
Yes, and that can be. It wants you to have that, and it kind of interrogates, our fascination with crime, morbid or otherwise, and then kind of how does that like shape or warp people when that becomes like an unhealthy obsession and this thing where what you're doing is wrong, and it's she's having to go deep into this kind of like dark web. And I think the film also does a very good job of like depicting like this quote unquote dark web. I think usually that's kind of some magic, hand wavy like notion that the Hollywood has no idea what this like the dark web is. But here she's doing things that are so illegal and unacceptable, and yet she keeps going.
Just keeps going. Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one, I think, to have as a top highlight there.
Mm-hmm.
That's 20 movies, 10 from each of us. to maybe check out if you get the time, because that's, there's all kinds of really interesting stuff that's coming out. And next time around, we will be talking about Oscar nominees. We'll talk about the Best Picture nominees. We'll talk about some of the other ones, like animation. Kind of see how that all goes. And we'll be able to put a nice little bow on 2024
and boot it gently out the door.
There we go. 'Cause we got a whole lot of other shit to deal with now. Oh my god. Anyways, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for this special episode. If you want to see more of us, I'm Daniel Goldhorn on YouTube.
And I'm Reynard, /cinema on Tumblr.
And we'll see you all next time. Take care.
Bye.